We think our partners expect perfect work from us. Our clients want everything to be just right. And so the perfectionism, what started off as being maybe a struggle to be excellent, now becomes a controlling, dominating fear of doing anything wrong that will hurt our clients, hurt our futures, hurt our careers, hurt our firm. And it becomes very, very limiting. And there's a real personal fear that underlies our perfectionism, that somehow we might not be good enough for this firm, good enough to represent this client, good enough maybe even to be a lawyer. And so we're afraid of making mistakes. We're afraid of doing something wrong. We're afraid of losing that case. And we're afraid of being judged by our clients, judged by our peers, judged by the other lawyers in our office, judged by our partners. And it becomes a mental state that is paralyzing.
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles.
It's 2 a.m. You're still at the office, reviewing that document for now the 5th time. Your family's asleep, dinner's long, sink's cold, and that voice in your head keeps saying, just one more review. I'll be done soon. Has to be perfect. I know that voice all too well. I lived with it for decades. Today, we're going to talk about the perfectionism trap that keeps brilliant lawyers from reaching their full potential. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how to break free from it. I'm Gary Miles, the free lawyer. I'm here to send you helpful tips to help you manage such overwhelming obstacles like perfectionism, which so many of us struggle with it, don't we? So a little bit about me and where my perfectionism came with. See, I know a lot about perfectionism because it's been a lifelong struggle for me and something that really only recently I've learned how to overcome and to manage. See, when I was a kid, I was chubby. Well, that's a nice word for saying what I was. I was quite overweight. I wore these nerdy glasses and I used academic achievement as my armor. I was picked on, I was bullied, I was made fun of. But I thought if I proved myself in school, that would show I was worthwhile. And I worked extremely hard and I did extremely well in high school, college, and law school. And we all have those kinds of experiences that may, as a child, contribute to our perfectionistic tendencies. Maybe it was a parent we had a hard time pleasing. But see, then we go to law school. And in college, we were extremely successful. But we get to law school and things are graded on a curve. And every mistake can be devastating. Every mistake on that written project we hand in, or when we take our exam and we're competing against everyone else, we're worried that if we screw up something, it's going to affect our grade. If it affects our grade, it'll affect our class rank. If it affects our class rank, it'll affect our ability to get a job. And heck, we might have gone through law school for nothing. We go down that path of awfulizing everything and feeling like we just have to be perfect so we can get the class rank that we want. And we start off with a very focused attitude when we begin our law practice, but soon this perfectionism becomes overwhelming. We think our partners expect perfect work from us. Our clients want everything to be just right. And so the perfectionism, what started off as being maybe a struggle to be excellent, now becomes a controlling, dominating fear of doing anything wrong that will hurt our clients, hurt our futures, hurt our careers, hurt our firm. And it becomes very, very limiting. And there's a real personal fear that underlies our perfectionism, that somehow we might not be good enough for this firm, good enough to represent this client, good enough maybe even to be a lawyer. And so we're afraid of making mistakes. We're afraid of doing something wrong. We're afraid of losing that case. And we're afraid of being judged by our clients, judged by our peers, judged by the other lawyers in our office, judged by our partners. And it becomes a mental state that is paralyzing. And our perfectionism affects us in so many ways. It causes real distortion and handicaps in our time management. We get to a point where we're endlessly reviewing pleadings, motions, transactional documents, well past the point of any value. We can't let them go. We can't let them go out the door. What holes will the other lawyer poke in what we said? What will the party representing the other side of the deal see when they see that mistake we made? And our relationships with our clients suffer. Why? Not because we're preparing good documents for them, but because we spend so much time trying to review and perfect each and every punctuation on that long pleading that we don't have time to take their calls. We fall behind. We're so busy. We're so stressed, and they can hear the tension in our voice when they don't need perfect documents. They don't want perfect documents. They want their documents to be done quickly and efficiently, and for us to be available and be open to hearing their concerns. It affects our ability to grow. We're afraid to take on different kind of cases that might be great growth opportunities for us because we think we're not good enough, or we're waiting for the opportunity to be just so perfect so we can really proceed with it. So we get stuck. We don't try new cases. We don't look for new opportunities because we think we're not good enough. We're not perfect enough in that area. But what are the biggest stresses for us? The mental health impact, the anxiety, the stress, the worry, and it can become a physical impact as well. Headaches, stomach aches, gaining weight, maybe addictive behaviors. And there's a personal cost. We may not be present on our vacation. We may go to our kids' soccer game but not be there because we're worried, or we may miss family events altogether. We're not there for the people we really love and care about, the ones we're doing this for, the ones where we want to be a lawyer to make a nice income, to take care of our family, but we're not there for them. And when we're with them, we're so distracted. Our minds are elsewhere. And you may say, oh, Gary, but law is a careful profession. We have to dot the I's and cross the T's and do conscientious work. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. But sometimes that strive to be excellence and to be careful and to be professional crosses a line to where we have to be perfect. And here's some warning signs that you've gone too far. I'm going to give you 5 warning signs. So look out for these. The first is the endless review cycle. We just can't let that big pleading go out the door. We keep reviewing it, looking for mistakes. How can we make this better? How can we improve it? Or maybe it's a contract the other side's waiting for. We look at it time and time and time again, and it gets our eyes glaze over trying to find something else in it. We're hesitant to delegate things to others. Do you ever struggle with delegation? That may be an issue of perfectionism, because you tell yourself, I can do this faster and better myself, meaning I can do it almost perfect and my assistant cannot. And then there's the malpractice monster. How often do you worry about getting sued for some mistake you might have made or maybe didn't make? How often do we worry about that? One client I work with, that's a huge fear of his. He's never been sued for malpractice, and he's really never had a significant complaint about his work. He's one of the best lawyers in the country, but he can be stuck in his mind worrying about getting sued for malpractice, imagining all these bizarre, exaggerated scenarios about the possibility of getting sued for something he did wrong when he's done nothing wrong. And what does that malpractice monster lead us to do? We research things we don't need to. We keep reviewing our documents. We go overboard in how we prepare just to make sure we don't get sued. And then there's the issue of feedback. How do you feel when someone gives you constructive suggestions and says, maybe next time do it differently? Do you take it personally? Do you get defensive? If you do, that's a possible sign of perfectionism, because we all should be in growth mode. We should all be willing to hear constructive criticisms, to try to do better. But when we take those suggestions personally, maybe that's a sign of perfectionism. And the last one that I'll throw out is our vanishing work-life balance. And that's maybe one of the greatest crimes of all, that when we get involved in trying to be too perfect, our work takes first, second, and third, and fourth priority. Our life no longer has any balance. We work more hours than we should. We can't even bill for all the times we work because we know they're too much. We can't put down review pleading yet again. We've done that 6 times. And our family becomes to be distant. And we don't like being separated from them, but we don't know how to get out of it. So I'm going to give you some suggestions now. I'm going to give you 5 tips on things you can do to help with this perfectionism. The first is the 2-pass rule. And I'll say in the beginning, this is not for things like your Supreme Court brief. Those require much more care. But for run-of-the-mill pleadings and documents and contracts, use the 2-pass rule, which is the first time you review the document primarily for substance. Does it communicate what you want it to? Does your pleading make the arguments you want it to make? And then you review it for form. Does it look good? Is the sentence structure good? Is my punctuation good? You've reviewed it for substance, and then you reviewed it for form. It's not a Supreme Court brief, then stop. That's it. Only 2 passes, then stop. Not 6, not 8. The second is what I call time boxing. We're actually going to set a boundary on how much time you spend reviewing your document. And it can be flexible with, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a very simple motion to compel, it might only be 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most. If it's a little more involved pleading, maybe 30 minutes. But you decide and want an appropriate amount of time to review that document. And you set a timer on your phone or something else that when that goes off, you're done. That's it. And that will keep you focused and motivated and working hard to get it reviewed in that time. But it'll stop you. If an hour is needed to review it, it'll stop you from reviewing it for 5 hours. The next is to set priorities. Not everything you have deserves the same level of scrutiny. Your emails don't need hardly any review. Just crank them out, make sure the substance is good, and send them out. Simple pleadings, very little review and scrutiny. But you're going to have other things that are important. Your motion for summary judgment on a big case, you want that to be just right. So draw priorities on what you spend your time on. And focus your time on those, but on the simple things, don't spend nearly as much time. The other is, I call it the mentor mirror. Sometimes we get stuck thinking our work isn't good enough, or we could do better, or we might get sued. And this is one way I help my clients, because I'm their mentor and I can give them advice. I can explain to them they're overreacting. I can explain to them they're awfulizing, they're worrying too much. But if you don't have a mentor, or if you don't have someone to talk to, ask yourself when you're worried and stressed and overwhelmed about a pleading, or you've looked at it 6 or 7 times. Ask yourself, what advice would I give my colleague down the hall if he presented the same situation to me? What would I tell him? Because then you're objective. And whatever advice you give that other lawyer, apply it to yourself. Apply it to yourself. I really do encourage you to get your own mentor, because they can be, I'm just amazed how much growth my clients have when they commit to being open with me and listening, because I can help them see how their perfectionism isn't striving for excellence as much as it is a mental obstacle. So consider what you tell another lawyer in the same situation, and then apply that to yourself. Build a support system through coaching or peer relationships. Connect with me or another mentor, or get a lunch group of colleagues where you have lunch. My 2 senior partners in my firm, both of whom have really long since passed away, they would every day have a lunch group. And they didn't go every day and have lunch. They might be in trial or they might be away. And not everybody came every day, but every day the 6 or 8 or 10 attorneys would get together. Maybe 4 of them, maybe 5 of them on a given day. But every day they got together and they were close friends and they shared things. They shared things back and forth. And they gave each other support and encouragement. So that's another thing to consider. Look for colleagues you can connect with. I've had the privilege of coaching a lot of simply amazing attorneys. And I've seen how they can be so overwhelmed with insecurity and fear, worrying if they've done everything right, getting knocked off their pegs when the other lawyer calls them and says, you don't know what you're doing, you're wrong in your position, all those sorts of things. And when I coach them, and I think of this one insurance defense lawyer in Florida, an amazing lawyer, so full of strength and courage and effort. But she was always worried she wasn't good enough. And when we worked together, I helped her see her value, how strong she is, how much talent she has. And by the end, we get those challenging emails from other lawyers, but she didn't take them personally. She just handled them. And, I've tried a lot of cases in my career and I've done well, and certainly in many more than I've not. But I want to share with you 2 very difficult experiences I had. I got to try a wrongful discharge case claiming my client was fired because he had filed a workers' compensation claim. And the evidence was only circumstantial. The employer didn't put in a memo or firing him because of his workers' comp claim. It was very, very difficult. But I built up a really strong case with a lot of inferences that could be drawn from the circumstances surrounding his employment and his termination. And the jury was out for only an hour, and every penny that I asked for, they gave me. It was such a resounding experience, such a victory, so exciting. And they filed a motion to dismiss, claiming there was not enough information to support that jury verdict. And to my terrible surprise, the judge granted it. And his dismissal stood up on appeal. We lost the case. And I felt so devastated. I felt like I put my heart and soul into it and I lost. And the other experiences is much more recently and later in my career. I used to do defense work, but had a plaintiff's motor tort. And I and the defense counsel spent all of our time arguing about the medicals. Were they caused? What were they? Both of us knew it was going to be a plaintiff's verdict. To both of us, liability is pretty clear. And shockingly, the jury entered a verdict for the defendant on liability. And those taught me, for 24 hours in each case, I was really devastated. But then I asked myself, what can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? And you're going to find that you'll build your resilience as soon as you stop expecting to be perfect, because perfect simply doesn't exist. And I encourage you to strive for excellence instead of perfectionism. I spent decades believing perfectionism was my superpower. My success in high school, college, law school, clerking in federal court, I thought perfectionism was me. That's what I was to strive for. But what I discovered was that perfectionism was actually my prison. The day I started breaking free wasn't the day my practice suffered. It was the day it truly began to thrive. My clients got what they actually needed. My team felt empowered rather than scrutinized. And I rediscovered parts of my life I'd been missing. Excellence is not about perfection in every task. It's about delivering what matters to your clients while preserving what matters to you. If you're ready to discover what's possible on the other side of perfectionism, I'm here to help you find that door of freedom. Remember, you don't have to walk through that door perfectly. You just have to walk through it. I'm Gary Miles, the Free Lawyer. Thank you for being here with me today. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Free Lawyer Podcast. Wherever you are listening, if you enjoyed what I shared, please leave me a rating and review. I would appreciate hearing more about what you like best and what topics you might like me to cover in future episodes. If you are interested in experiencing a more fulfilling and a more successful life, please contact me at www.garymiles.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me so I can learn more about you, your challenges, and your dreams. I appreciate each and every one of you, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks to all of you for your support.